Well, good morning, everybody. I thought I'd start you off in a little different place today here on Wednesday morning because I was thinking a lot about the recent floods that hit Dubai. So Dubai is located right about here. And you've noticed that over the last about 10 days or so, we've been showing these longer range outlooks suggesting much above average precipitation, for example, in this region of the Middle East, getting over here toward Pakistan and India. But I thought it would just be good to kind of take this broader scale look at things as we start today, because we continue to stay quite wet in Central and parts of Eastern Europe. Although when you get to the Black Sea, over the next 10 days, we're much drier over on this side towards Turkey and getting into the this part of the Russian wheat belt, but much wetter as you get onto the western side of the Black Sea. As you also look kind of other places globally, notice how wet things continue to be south of the Yangtze River. This is very, very early wet conditions here, given that we don't typically see what's called the Mayu front, which is a monsoonal feature that shows up in summer, which sits along the Yangtze. That usually just doesn't show up quite this early. So these wetter conditions that are being forecast for Southeast Asia just need to be monitored pretty closely. We're still seeing above average precip across parts of Eastern Australia as well in this pattern. And if we come back to South America, just continue to watch the models open up this area over to drier conditions. So this was kind of something the models were leading into and made sense given the longer term historical correlations with a fading El Nino, that we tended to open this up toward drier conditions. As I've stated many times, I thought this would have opened up much earlier in April than it did, but we recently had some very beneficial rains into this region. Still wet in southern Brazil, parts of Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, and very wet along the Amazon. But this drier sector that's opening is just something that's going to have to get our attention. Now, we'll come back to North America in a second, but I wanted to show you the monthly forecast from the European model, looking out in the month of May. And so this is the weeklies, just kind of getting that broad global perspective on things. So notice a continuation of some of the pattern we're seeing right now throughout this part of Europe. Notice the drier signals coming into parts of Brazil as well. Just a couple of things we've kind of continued to discuss here. But feel free to pause it and have a closer look at this figure. All right, as we press forward, signals in the tropics are pretty weak right now. MJO is collapsed in a null space, but this is what's really grabbed my attention. See the blues on this Hofmuller diagram. So this is today, and this is going all the way through the beginning of May. And what we see here, whenever you see blue, represents stronger than normal trade winds. And that is a telltale characteristic of, La Nina-like conditions. Doesn't mean La Nina's here yet. It just means we should expect to see this a lot as we go forward. Now, reality is this is putting a lot of rising motion over in phase 1-2. Despite the fact that the MJO is not currently being forecast there, you can see the blues running into the reds, and this is where our rising motion is going to be. All right. And I want to think about that because one of the big things we're going to do in this video is go after our next analog year. So on Friday, it was 88 and 83. On Monday, we did 98, 92, and we did 2016. Yesterday, we focused solely on 2010. Today, I want to talk about 2020. And the reason I want to focus in on 2020 is that when you just look right now at global ocean temperatures, 2020 might be the closest in terms of the position of the warmer regions versus the cooler regions. And we need to have a discussion about what happened in 2020 because there was a very weak El Nino signature that winter. And by the time we got into summer, we started to develop cold signals in through here. And right now, our El Nino, just take a look. This is the Nino region 3.4. So this would be right out in this area. The ocean temperatures have continue to drop. And technically, if you're just going to use those ocean temperatures alone, once we get below this 0.5 threshold, we would kind of consider, based on ocean temperatures, we would be in so neutral conditions, which was what was expected for this spring. The questions we have is how far does this continue to drop? So if you're just interested in the longer range, skip down here to the end where we do the 2020 comparison. I will review the NMME and the European model forecast, plus show you the new long range that just came out from the IRI multi-model probability forecast group. So all of that's ahead of us. In the near term, though, this is yesterday's deep low that rolled through the midsection of the country. And as the sun was setting, we could once again see kind of a lot of dust blowing on the backside of this very deep convection, multiple rounds of it coming into parts of Missouri and Iowa and Illinois yesterday, producing a lot of severe weather. And we're already starting to see the beginnings of the cold air that's coming in from Canada into Montana right now, where we're expecting 4 to 5 days of pretty chilly air that's going to advance toward the south and towards the east. In total, our severe weather reports were up to 153 reports. The tornadoes were, if you look down here at some of the states, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, that's where we saw most of the tornado reports. And there was one, not sure what happened there, but there was one I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, it looks like they're switching it over. They're switching the data right now. So this 16th is not in. Oh, so they'll get that fixed. But anyway, there's one amazing tornado that was in Iowa that is really worth going to see. It's in my Twitter feed and my likes if you want to go have a look at it. Just amazing to kind of check that out. On the hail side of it, this is what I've got early this morning here in terms of hail for the last 3 days. So we're kind of seeing the effect of that storm system plus the severe weather that we saw here earlier in the week over parts of the mid-Atlantic as well. So this has been a week where we're adding up quite a few severe weather reports. But add up all the precipitation and this is what you've got. So I just want to let you know something. I've been working hard on a redesign of a lot of my maps to make them more useful, to make them load faster, and to give you more options on regions and seeing things a little bit clearer. And so this is kind of what they're going to look like. I left this weird line on the top where you don't have any data in the MRMS just to show you where they cut off the data and also let you know that this will be the kind of the standard projection for the U.S. and Southern Canadian Prairie that I'm going to start to use. So this is just your last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation through this morning. But the nice thing about the new mapping system and its speed is that I can now create a lot of regional maps. So through 6 a.m. this morning, this is the kind of view here in the north central United States. And we're able to then overlay some numbers and kind of see how much precipitation came through. So I hope you find these useful. I'm working on a redesign of agweather.com so that it is much more user-friendly and I think contains more of the stuff that a lot of you want. But it's gonna take me a little while longer, but we'll get there. All right, with all of that, let's take a look at where things are this morning. Just go back over the last 18 hours and watch this low curl up. And as we get into this morning, we're seeing through the Ohio Valley, through parts of the southeast, and storms continuing to go over the Great Lakes. And this morning, kind of looking at some lightning, while the storms have kind of backed off a bit on kind of their size and scale, we can still see where that southern front is lingering with this lightning strikes this morning, some over here in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and then here around the Great Lakes, some of those storms linger today. All right, as this storm system continues to curl up, the Storm Prediction Center has given a larger area here in the Ohio Valley, getting up toward Lake Erie, a slight risk of severe storms. But remember that second low that's sneaking around the backside, well, it's going to be pushing the southern tip of the shortwave right in through this area. So we're going to watch here later on today as well, including the risk of some snow on the backside of that. We'll talk about that in a second. And then tomorrow on the 18th, over parts of the Mid-South down to the Red River Valley, but right in through where the Mississippi and Ohio come together. We're going to keep an eye out on this region. Once we get into the 19th, we're going to just watch the tail end of that front move over parts of the southeast, and it will linger. It's going to sit here, and that's going to serve as a trigger to produce more precipitation in this area, which we're going to see more closely when we look at the individual model runs. So as I love to do, let's go to the upper levels. This is where the story is kind of told, and I want to show you the pieces that are coming together. So lead wave fading, deeper wave behind, that's where all the cold air is. Why again? The high amplitude to this pattern. So there's plenty of cold air in this that's going to dip down. And as that trough goes over parts of eastern Canada there, it does link up with some much colder air that's been sitting here between the Hudson Bay and Greenland. And that's why we have through the end of this weekend the cold risks for a large area. I'll show you the new frost maps in just a few moments. Okay, so here we are on Sunday, and as we work into early next week, there's another little shortwave that sneaks across the northern tier of the U.S. as we have a broader wave leaving the East Coast. This is Monday into Tuesday. But as we stated yesterday, the pattern by about a week, 9 days from now, continues to want to give us this look. So this is big warm-ups that happen ahead of another storm system. And as long as you get troughs in the west and southwest flow coming over the mountains, that's an active pattern. I still think we find planting windows. I think we get breaks in between systems, and you're going to find time, not everywhere, because some places get locally heavy rain from thunderstorms, but there's going to be some breaks in this that allow for, for some planting. I do want to make a point here that I am getting a bit concerned about April 23rd, 24th, 25th in New England and maybe in the Great Lakes, as some lingering cold air might produce another frost event, kind of limited to this region, but we need to keep an eye on that as well. And as we take this on out, we just continue to see by 10 days from now the pattern doing this. And it's being echoed in the artificial intelligence forecast system, which keeps dropping broader troughs in the west, and they keep ejecting into the central U.S. That's an active central United States storm pattern. And the big question I have, we've been asking this for a while, the speed of these troughs, how far back to the west are we able to draw moisture to kind of work away at that large area in the central United States that's missing out on precipitation. So this is our best chance for this. Seeing troughs come over the western mountains is what can help relieve drought in the midsection of the country. But I understand a lot of people that are in this area say, well, each one of these big lows comes through and I am missed, and other people seem to be getting a lot of the rain. And I want to let you know that I completely understand what's going on here. We need to see these troughs slow down, draw more moisture back to the west, and fill this area in. So let's see what they're up to now that we've kind of got a good idea of maybe what the end of April is going to look like. High-res models first. So this is 6 a.m. this morning, about the time I'm recording. And again, you're going to watch right in through here later on this afternoon, coming out of Indiana into Ohio. This is kind of the last push from this system, bringing in some storms into that area. Looks like the primary threat today is going to be from straight line wind damage, but possibly some hail. And we'll just need to keep an eye out on this because there is enough wind shear to produce rotating storms as well. Just not the same setup as we saw yesterday over Iowa in terms of producing tornadoes. Now notice by this evening, the next wave, the one that follows it, is coming out of Wyoming and Colorado into Nebraska. And this is now the third day that the models have been pretty generous with the moisture across parts of Nebraska. But into the overnight hours tonight, remember that second area of slight risk? You can see where the model is putting down the potential for a squall line of thunderstorms to come through this part of Missouri, possibly linking back into Kansas. Now, we got to watch this carefully. This is overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. While it's been consistent in the models, I'm not overly sure of its exact placement to what late tonight into tomorrow morning. And then that system pushes through Missouri into southern Illinois, where we're going to keep an eye out for the risk of those strong storms as well. But take note, on the back side, you see some of this snow getting out into this area? Just want you to see that as well, plus the snow around the deeper low that's going to hug right up against the 49th here, with snow to the north of it, but maybe some snow showers getting into the very northern parts of Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota. All right, so that low continues to press east and gets into the northeast by about right there. And just take note again, Friday afternoon, as the cold air comes down, we've got the risk of snow coming back into parts of Nebraska, and you can also see it here around this broader low into Minnesota. All right. So what I want to do next is I want to give you that multi-model precipitation outlook. We're going to start with the artificial intelligence forecasting system. Now you can start to see the lingering effect of that front sitting in this area. But this is the next 7 days by the AIFS system. This is the national blend of models. So I haven't shown you this one a lot, but I will. We're going to start showing it quite a bit more. This is an attempt by the National Weather Service to kind of blend together every single ensemble member, every operational run, everything they've got to try to come up with some consensus. And I see a story developing that I think is important, and that would be the dryness we're getting in here, the dryness we continue to see here. Why we stay wet farther to the south seems to be just lingering fronts that don't leave while we've got good moisture transport. But the next 7 days from the NBM is looking something like this, and the other models are supportive of that. What's interesting, though, that the NBM does not capture is the next wave that possibly comes through and rips off some severe storms in the midsection of the country. And I want to know if that one is truly going to be able to draw some moisture back into the plains, which are quite dry right now. Here's our last model to show. This would be the GFS. So real quick in review, this is the artificial intelligence. This is the NBM. Here we go with the European model, and finally the GFS. And so there is some good agreement amongst the models as to the overall pattern of precipitation, but highly nuanced at local areas. So let's go ahead and compare the GFS to the European. Got everything squared away. The only model I'm waiting on updating is the WPC. but they have put out a notice that they're having some major technical difficulties with it. But we've got everything else back online. So let's walk through this. Here we are going through Thursday. There's that next push coming through as one system leaves. Snow up here in parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan and Manitoba into Ontario. This would be Thursday night, getting into Friday morning. Front clears the east. We then watch as the cold air comes down in this high pressure. The risk of some snow in this area like we talked about. The front lingers here, and there's the chance for more heavy rain into parts of Texas. It's in both models. Where are we in time? Friday night into the day on Saturday. As we then play through Saturday going into Sunday, that front continues to slide east while a weak low moves into this part of the Pacific Northwest. Precip is leaving the southeast. And as we get out there to Tuesday and eventually into Wednesday, there appears to be another weak low. I'll kind of rock back and forth over this in the midsection of the U.S. It's not in the same position in the models. Notice in the GFS it's north, in the European it's south here. But as we play this forward Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, that low clears into New England. And after this, the models kind of fall apart with respect to one another in the timing of systems. But overall, when we get out to the 24th, I'm concerned about cold coming in here and our next broader trough sliding into the southwest and what that might do. So let's look at some probability maps. This is the drier side of things. These are the locations over the next 10 days we're seeing the risk of staying below a half inch in terms of total accumulated precipitation. So it's kind of a same story, right? I'm worried about this region, this area, and parts of the southeast are going over a bit drier as well. Looking on the wetter side of it, the model will probably reset. Yes, sorry about that. Let's go back. About the time I start recording every morning, we get a new model run in, and that's all right. We'll fix it. But here you go. This is the chance of 1 inch and the chance of 2 inches. So heaviest rains are going to be where that lingering front is. This would be desperately needed. Missouri needs this moisture. We have got to see if the models do deliver on that next system coming through to bring in some moisture. That's not just the next one. There's actually another one following. That's what we're going to keep an eye out on. All right. Okay. From here, I want to show you some just kind of important analysis. I mentioned how wet it is down here. We also have several of our rivers down here that are in flood stage. I'm only showing you icons for rivers that are in the action stage, minor, moderate, or major flood stages. And so this is just a quick snapshot across the country of what our river systems look like in terms of where they're flooding. And it also gives you an idea about where we're going to see significant delays because of too much water. What I want to also show you is the latest on the Mississippi. It is currently the highest it's been going back a full year. Remember, our spring flooding last year was earlier. All right, so we can see where the river currently sits here at 22 feet above low stage at Memphis. Just wanted to keep you up to date on that. And as we look out there, I mentioned snow. I do need to look at the probability of getting 1 inch over the next 10 days. So right along the border, getting, of course, into Canada, you saw this, into the Rockies. This is, again, a probability of 1 inch, but just take note of this region right in through here. Just want to keep an eye out on it. 2 times late this week, we could get a little bit of snow here. And then we'll watch New England for this as well. On to week 2. The models continue to keep things a bit more active. I still think we find windows in between systems, but it's good to overall see moisture. Now, you know how much I've been questioning how far back we can get this moisture. Notice the GFS is much more aggressive at delivering that moisture farther back to the west than the current European ensemble is. This is what week 2 looks like right now in the European ensemble in terms of wetter conditions. This is going to be a bit too much for this area. We need to get some time to dry out, but we do need the moisture into this region as we finish up this month of April and get into the month of May. All right. So from there, let's talk temperatures, because this morning, again, we have this freeze issue going on in the Willamette Valley here in Oregon and parts of the Columbia Basin. We have the winter weather advisories, which you saw for the snow coming through here, and still some stronger winds in parts of Montana and North Dakota. These are all of our flooded regions down here along the rivers. Looking at those temperatures, this is the next 7 days of where we're expecting a frost. And now we've fully captured the cold air that the artificial intelligence forecasting system picked up, 13 or 14 days ago. This is impressive that it did so well with this. So that's the 7-day frost potential based off the NDFD data. And to show you what that looks like, here we are. This is this morning's lows getting into tomorrow. So we've focused a lot on the cold that's here and here, but watch it continue to sink toward the south. This is Friday morning. There's our frost line. Getting into Saturday morning. Now remember, these are just morning temperatures. We just touch these here and then we warm back up, but into the 50s, I think. Then we get into Sunday. This is kind of day 4 of the cold air up in Montana. Day 5, we start to see some moderation, but this is when we have our kind of largest extent of the coldest conditions. And then already by Tuesday, the west is warming. We're going to push this out and get a little bit different look here. So high temperatures today. Getting into tomorrow, watch the cold air just plunge into the south. There it is by Friday. And then watch the west go warm, which they do need the heat units in the west. There's Saturday cold, getting into Sunday. Remember, that's when the front is lingering in this area. And as we play forward into Monday and Tuesday, we start to see the pattern opening back up again. All right, GDDs over the next 7 days. Just take a quick look at the map. This is base 50, max 86. And from here, I want to show you the day 5 through 10. Got the GFS ensemble back online too. Sorry, but that was offline yesterday. Looks very similar to the European model, day 5 through 10. We watched the cooler air exit, but we will be paying attention to that next trough coming into California. And then as we look out there, day 10 through 15, this is just kind of where the pattern has given us this advertised look of western U.S. troughs opening up to southwest flow across the U.S. It's also in the European ensemble. So I mentioned at the beginning, I'm concerned about one more day for some frost issues. And the day I want to take you to here, we're going to use the European model. This is 7 a.m. on Wednesday, the 24th. So you can see the patchy frost here, and of course along the mountains. And then what I'm concerned about is there 7 a.m. on the 25th. The European model on the 25th is dropping a frost back into this area. Now this is the operational run. We're at 204 hours. Got to be super careful with it. Just want you to be aware that that's what the operational run is doing. The artificial intelligence forecasting system is not. It's got cool weather. You know, we're down here in the 40s, maybe upper 30s, but it's got the frost line pretty far to the north. So that's just another day we're going to monitor. Again, that's next Thursday, April 25th. All right, May. Now that the system is out, you see the model's backed off on how wet it had originally projected things. This model has a very strong initialization bias. Whatever it's got at the beginning, it carries. But we continue to see kind of a similar pattern, which means we're going to open this area up, I think, to normal spring severe weather into the month of May. What I'm questioning is it really dry down here in parts of the southeast, given the pattern that we're going to be watching? So I don't have a lot of additional analysis on May for you. I've shown you my analogs in the last couple of several videos, and you know that we have some weak teleconnections right now for the month of May, given the MJO is stalled. So we'll take the models and kind of use them as a benchmark. What we're going to now do is go to 2020. This is our ocean temperatures now. And at the beginning of this video, I said 2020 looks something similar. That's 2020. Now, overall, if I kind of rock back and forth, I see a lot of similarities. In fact, if I put a correlation algorithm over this, we'd find that this compared to all other years would probably be our closest. But we need to be careful just saying 2020. And the reason for that is this is what our spring has looked like so far from March 1st to April 16th in terms of precipitation. These are ranks. Now I'm going to show you 2020 in a little different view, but we're going to look at it in terms of anomalies here. So 2020, March to April, was drier than average throughout a big section of the plains and Midwest, and very dry for the Northwest. Very wet into California and wet from Texas into the Southeast, except for along the Gulf Coast. So are we there? In some regards, there are some similarities for the midsection of the country. Definitely similar here. Maybe not so much as you go up the East Coast, as wet as it's been, but not in the West. We can see overall we've seen near normal to above normal precipitation in the West. So we're just trying to see, is 2024 behaving like 2020? That's the idea here. Next, what about the temperature pattern? Well, this was the March to April 2020 temperature pattern. No, I'm sorry. We already looked at that. That's precipitation. Forgive me. We'll do temperatures in a second. I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to look at drought. This is our current drought monitor, and this is 2020. Current, April 2020. I'm doing this just to make a point that while I think that there are some important similarities. I don't want to say that everything is the same. We're starting in different positions. That's the main idea. Now let's talk about the temperatures. This is March to April temperature anomaly. So we're a bit cooler across the north, but quite mild everywhere else, a bit cooler across the west. Yeah, I think that's similar. I mean, that's not that far off, is it? That's, again, March to April 2020, and that's this March through mid-April. So I see some similarities there. But what I want to talk about is what happened by the time we got to July, and this has me intrigued. We're expecting something like this out of our El Nino region by July. That is the emergence of La Nina. This is not a full-blown, bring it all in, massive La Nina event. It's a slower progression. But these temps are warm, and the warmth is pushing into this area, knocking out the cold anomalies here. What was very peculiar about 2020 was what the MJO did. It lived a whole lot here over by Africa and then here in the Atlantic, a lot of rising motion in the atmosphere. This was part of our massive hurricane season. So this is a unique view, a lot of suppression across the Pacific, rising motion over Africa. Now, the atmosphere responded with a jet stream that came screaming in through this area with ridges here and ridges there. So what ended up happening is we had low pressure here and lower pressure in that area. And the reason why I'm so intrigued by this is because of the resulting temperature and precipitation patterns. Here's the precipitation pattern from June to August. Now that's a 3-month time period, and I'm only going down to a -4 to a +4 on the precipitation in inches. So when you look at it, it would be as though we missed about a month's worth of precipitation here, if you're curious what that would mean. About 4 inches is average for a June or July in summer. But take a look at how wet things were generally here. We had this drier stretch, which of course was broken by a massive derecho in August. Now, I'm not predicting a major derecho. Okay, that's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm curious about is, do you almost see kind of dry conditions that kind of are coming out of the Southwest? And this is why maybe I'm letting this particular year rent a little bit too much space in my brain right now. Because as I look at it, and I look at the temperature pattern, which was well above average for a lot of this area, okay? Where was it cooler or near normal? Where there was one trough here and where there was another trough there. Take a look. This is what the current year forecast is. Let's start this over. There we are. This is May, June, July. What did the models do? We talked about this. This would be June, July, August. See how they're kind of spreading this drought in between stormy regions? And that's July, August, September. I'm just seeing a lot of similarities in the model behavior and what evolved in 2020, and plus the ocean temperatures look similar. And I want to give all the credit to my colleague Matt Reardon for bringing this up to me, because I was not thinking of 2020 as being a strong analog. And the reason for that is when I put my analogs together, I like to use this site here. And here's the big reason. Let's go back to the 1950 to present. In 2020, which is here, we had a very weak El Nino. And it just slid like this. And we're way up here. That's where we finished. And we're now coming down like that. So it wasn't necessarily a year that I thought of being big El Nino in winter coming out of it. But the ocean temperature pattern seems to have arrived at the same spot in spring. And we wonder if it's going to look like that by the time we get into summer. So that's why I'm looking at this going, man, the pattern showing up in the models look like what actually happened in 2020. Now, I hope you all know this. I'm going to state it again. There is no such thing as a perfect analog. All right, so please don't hear me say 2020 and then assume it's going to look just like 2020. It can't. The atmosphere doesn't work that way. But if there are some similarities, maybe it's an important analog to be thinking about here. I want to give you one new perspective on all of this, and it is the newest data from the IRI Multi-Model Probability Forecast System. This is their May, June, July outlook. Now take note of South America. During grain fill, drier conditions are showing up in their model. If we just zoom in here on North America, though, I want to show you what they've got. That's May, June, July, precipitation anomalies. This is June, July, August. Kind of see this? Wetter in the southeast. This is July, August, September. Drier getting in here. This is a be honest, it's a bit of a baffling forecast. And August, September, October, at least they're in agreement that there's going to be a very active hurricane season. And by the way, 2020 was the most active as you look at it here. So just taking a look at all the named systems that we had coming through. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't the most active. Was it? Yes, we went past, oh dear, I should know my hurricane seasons. 2005, we went 28 systems. I'll have to go back and remember how many we did in 2020. Sorry about that. I didn't look that up before we started. So I want you to know I'm thinking about it. And we've got to continue to kind of build that story together as we think about what this summer could potentially look like. And at this stage, I made a pretty strong case that the analogs we've analyzed up to this point don't have the right things now to make me think that they are the year. But there's something about 2020 that's got me intrigued. And I think it's important for us to continue to investigate it as we look at all the rest of the models. Okay, thanks again for hanging on a while. We've kind of covered a lot in these videos. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. I'll be in Tucson tomorrow morning and then back home tomorrow night. So you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.